Hello, how are you guys doing? I just want to give you guys some updates. This week will be pretty busy for me, getting some stuff done to my house, and then I have a dental appointment this week, so I'll be pretty busy. What I was thinking was I was gonna kind of change up my YouTube channel to still be, education related, but more focused on food, right? Food is connected to almost every content area. Kids love food, right? They love desserts. They love eating. They enjoy it. That's what they do in the classroom, right? They eat and they snack. Uh, so I thought of taking that interest and creating lesson ideas for every content area, of course, standards based and appropriate based, so that students are more engaged with your lessons, right? So, going into like multicultural stuff, connecting to their cultural background, excuse me, connecting to their cultural backgrounds um, can be, it can be fun, you know, uh, maybe connecting, like if they're Italian, connecting Italian foods, if they're Latino, Hispanic, connecting Hispanic foods to their cultures. So, like, for example, let's say you're teaching them history, right? You can have them do the history of pasta or the history of rice or the history, like where it all came from. They can do a research assignment on it, and you can have them do that. You can have them compare and contrast essay. Uh, what they like about Latino foods, Hispanic foods, and what they compare to, what they like or don't like with other foods. And I think it would be kind of fun, to have them do that. In terms of desserts, you could have them tell you what kind of desserts they like, and then have them do a history lesson on that. And so you can do history and English, you can do a lot with food lessons. Math, you can do, uh, basic baking, list the ingredients, measure the cups, figure out, all of that good math stuff for a good, baking assignment. For science, you can have them do, a science experiment with food. So I was going to take all of the food concept and apply it to the standards for math, for science, for history, for Spanish, right? For English learners, right? They could translate it, and they could make, you can have them. They don't have to make the actual food in your class, but you can have them sort of think about, you know, things that way. They can do a presentation. If you can give them extra credit if they want. If they want to, cook something at home using those concepts, obviously with parental consent, because that's a lot of work, and you don't want some kid doing something without a parent consenting in their kitchen, right? And make sure it's safe and all that stuff. And that's another thing too, like safety issues. That could be brought up in your science class. So I was gonna start doing that. I was gonna start very simple with like pasta. I love pasta. I love Italian food. So I was gonna do a lesson or give you guys some ideas for pasta lessons. So that's where I'm headed with that. I think it would be interesting, but I think the more important point is you're taking an interest of a student and you're applying it to the content you're teaching them to engage them with the work you're engaging them with. So I thought it would be a fun idea. And going back to multilingual learners, you know, multilingual learners are a huge benefit to society, right? You go into any job, they need Spanish speakers, they need Arabic speakers, they need, it depends on what community they're in, but most of the jobs, they need bilingual learners. They need people that need two languages, right? English to understand English people, Spanish to be able to communicate to the Spanish speakers, um, and or French or Arabic. It depends on what community you're in. Like in Michigan, in Dearborn, there's a huge Arab American community. So if you have a kid that knows Arabic and English, they're going to thrive, with getting jobs. Jobs are gonna prefer them over other applicants because they know the language. And so, we do want to encourage our students to retain their home language because it's their identity, and going back to food, food is part of a person's identity. When they try to change up things, change up foods to, make it more American and get away from what the identity of the cultural identity, I think, that can be a little upsetting to a lot of groups. So I think, if you want to continue to help your students to appreciate and respect where they come from, have them do a little research about their cultural origins, and then connect it to foods that they like. And they don't have to cook in class. They can do a PowerPoint presentation. I mean, there's so many things that kids know that we don't even know, like how to do. Like they can do little bots. They can have little characters in there move around. They don't have to necessarily know how to draw or know how to do anything creative. Like today, there was a student that was struggling with one of the assignments. And so I said, they're asking you to do an audio of this or draw it out, do a storyboard. And I said, which do you prefer? And she was more comfortable with the visual part, but still she was not comfortable. She said she doesn't know how to draw. I said, I'm not looking at your art. I'm not, that's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at, can you sort of imagine this in your head and just whatever comes out in your head, just put it down, and that's fine. And that's adjusting the lesson to their needs and to what their, what their ability levels are. And she was fine with that. And she was a little resistant even with me saying, I'm okay with whatever you have to offer me with the visuals. But we have to be able to adjust to the students' ability levels. You will also have to push them to keep, you always want to keep raising the standard for them, right? Okay, so you've adjusted the lesson, you've allowed the student to draw pictures instead of do an audio or stick figures or whatever, and then you kind of want to throw in, okay, well now they want you to write a paragraph or two about this particular content, using the words that using the content, and so you want to make sure it's grammatically correct, and you want to make sure that your writing is on point. And she was okay with that. This is a very good student of mine. She's very good. She's very quiet. She's very shy, but she's a very hardworking student. So, and I didn't want. I mean, as much as I push, and sometimes I push too hard, and that is something that I need to work on. It's really hard for me because we're on a time crunch, right? This is credit recovery or online work, and sometimes we just have to push a little bit so that they get it done. But I have to push back to just, push back a little bit on people, on kids that are resistant, because if they're still resistant about something, then I need to negotiate with them, right? Negotiate what needs to be done in a way that needs to be done that works for them and that works for the standard that they're learning, and prepare them for the next level, right? I mean, it's hard work, but high school is different, right, than middle school and elementary school. I think it's all of it's relative to the programs and the high schools that students are in. But anyhow, so that's something that I'm gonna start doing: taking food, making it standards based, and applying it to all the different content areas. So what do you think about that? You think it'll be a good idea? What do you know, I'd like your input on that. Anyhow, I just want to say thank you. I may not be able to do any videos until after next week because of the work that's being done and in my place, and I have to, move my computer is not going to be available. But once everything is done, I'll be back on. But so just tell me what you think. I mean, even just whatever you think about that. So anyway, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys later.